Fire Emblem Three Houses, the new record setter as the #1 best-selling Fire Emblem game to date, shifting the series further into the mainstream and becoming my entry point into this series. I've already made a couple of videos on Three Houses, so feel free to check those out, as well as my video on Awakening, in case you're thinking of checking it out or just want to know a newcomer's thoughts on it. Nonetheless, today what we're going to be talking about is what made Fire Emblem Three Houses so special, and in turn, discovering how it gained its overwhelming popularity as the first Fire Emblem game on the Switch, really bringing in a plethora of new fans. If you do enjoy the video, a like and subscribe for more content like this is always greatly appreciated. And don't forget to leave a comment down below discussing your thoughts. Now, let's get into it. The first thing I wanted to discuss that really helped in bringing Three Houses to the forefront is its marketing. Fire Emblem Three Houses was not only marketed well, but marketed everywhere, at least from what I saw. You know that thing that Crunchyroll does, where it plays 5 ads in that one little ad slot, and they all happen to be the exact same ad repeated, and you can't skip it, so you keep hearing the same thing over and over again? Yeah, back when I was watching JoJo's, the ad of that time was an ad for Fire Emblem Three Houses. So if I didn't know what a Fire Emblem game was before, I definitely knew now. Three Houses marketed itself as a tactical JRPG, which allowed the player to have a choice in how the story will progress, and which house he will stand behind. From an outsider's perspective to the series, I can already see 2 aspects that will really draw someone into this game. The first is that the house system may remind you a little bit of Harry Potter, and a lot of people love Harry Potter. And the second, more important aspect being that of choice. People love choice. People love to choose a side and make a story go the way they want it to. If you couldn't tell how much people really do love having choices, just take a quick look at YouTube or Twitter polls and you'll see a very good example there, with how much interaction those get. So what the marketing for Three Houses did so well is play into that desire for choice. Do you want to follow Edelgard and the Black Eagles, Dimitri and the Blue Lions, or perhaps Claude and the Golden Deer? The branching narrative and choices the player has to make is absolutely fantastic, and outside of the marketing things, it leads me very well into my next point: the story and the gameplay. There's no doubt about it, Fire Emblem Three Houses is simply fun to play and has an absolutely fantastic story to boot. That's it. That's all there really is to it. I hope you enjoyed that part of the video. Nah, I'm just playing. Of course, I'm going to talk about the story and gameplay a bit more. Starting with the gameplay because I think it's easier to go over. Fire Emblem is a turn-based JRPG with extremely fun game mechanics, moving your units around like pieces on a chessboard. With a close-up view of the battlefield you can have that I didn't even know existed until my 3rd playthrough, and you should honestly check that out and take advantage of it because the maps are actually really beautiful and designed for that. The progression system is very straightforward, easy to learn, and really rewarding. Watching your units go from little students to a flock of Wyvern Lords, because what else would you masterclass as? Grinding some maps does get a little bit repetitive, but that's just the nature of the game. It took me all the way up until my 3rd playthrough to actually get sick of this grind, so it's not that bad. We also get a little hub world to play around with in the monastery, where we can talk with our students and partake in activities with them to raise their motivation for battle and learning, and also unlock support conversations. But we'll get more into those a little bit later. For now, let's get into the story. It can be told from 4 different perspectives, that being Edelgard's, Dimitri's, Claude's, and Rhea's. This will depend on what house you choose, and for the Black Eagles, it depends on if you side with Edelgard or Rhea at a certain point in the story. So let's delve a little bit further into each of these routes and discuss some of their strengths and their weaknesses, starting with my personal favourite route that I made an entire video on, Edelgard's route: Crimson Flower. Within this route you are very proactive, and the plot is pretty straightforward. The world's corrupt, Edelgard does not have a lot of time left to live, and she wants to make the world a better place using the time she has left most effectively, thus declaring a war on the corrupt church and, in turn, anyone else that happens to stand in her way. You know, I'd always compare Edelgard to Lelouch, but sometimes she starts to feel a little bit more like Eren. Nonetheless, I am oversimplifying this to the max, but I'll be doing this for all these routes, otherwise this video would be probably over an hour long. Unless you guys want something like that, and if you do, let me know. I can make separate videos on all of these routes, but anyway, let's continue. Crimson Flower features some amazing, unique supports to the route, and has, in my opinion, the most interesting lord being Edelgard. Again, I've made a whole video on her too if you wanted to check that out. And out of all the routes, personally, I find Crimson Flower to have the most fun and interesting map design. Now, for some cons. Crimson Flower is the shortest route of all available options in Fire Emblem Three Houses, and to some, it is a little bit unsatisfying. There's also not much lore on Faldlan or the church really present in this route, which, all things considered, I think actually makes sense for the route, but I can see why some people would be disappointed in that. Next up, we've got Claude and Rhea's routes, those being Verdant Wind and Silver Snow respectively. I'm grouping these together because of how similar they are. They're both reactive stories rather than proactive and focus a lot more on the lore of Faldlan. In each of these routes, we as the player uncover many secrets about the church and Rhea and learn much of the reasoning as to why Faldlan is in its current state. We also have the pressing matter of the war Edelgard started, but this time we're on the other side of it. We also get to see a bit more of those who slither in the dark, who kind of disappear in Crimson Flower. The real strong point of these routes are their focus on lore and understanding the setting. They have plenty of their own fun maps, and Claude is a really charismatic leader. That definitely won't disappoint you as far as entertainment goes. But for me, here are the cons. The routes feel dragged out, and particularly in Claude's route, you feel almost like a bystander in the massive war that's going on. But I feel as though at least Claude really carries Verdant Wind, whereas in Silver Snow, Byleth is the lead, and it just really suffers from that. As we all know, Byleth isn't the most interesting character in the game. Lastly, we've got Dimitri and the Azure Moon route. From what I've seen, this is the fan favorite route, and it's a lot more character driven than any other. However, I do like Azure Moon, and the fact that Dimitri has history with Edelgard makes that war a little bit more personal, so he doesn't feel like a bystander in the war in the same way that Claude does. In this route, Dimitri goes to a real, let's call it a tough spot, and has to grow as a person to move on from the past, face his inner demons, and come out a better person that can stand up to Edelgard in order to end the war. Its pacing is better than Verdant Wind and Silver Snow in my mind, and shows a lot more lore than Crimson Flower does. So it has a very good balance of story and lore, but it's not without its flaws. For me, the maps in Azure Moon just weren't as fun as some of the others, and the route starts to feel a little bit more pandering and tropey towards Dimitri, with Byleth quite literally coming to his aid and pulling him out of the darkness. It's a bit cliche and too direct for my liking at least, and almost feels like it starts to tip over a fine line into what feels like fanfiction writing. Basically, I get why people like Azure Moon, but it's just not for me. The final cutscene was amazing though and deserves all of the credit it gets, and I can only wish we had something like that in Crimson Flower when Edelgard cuts Dimitri down in the pouring rain. Imagine how amazing that could have looked. Anyway, no matter the route, the reason for each lord's success in their respective routes is because of the presence of Byleth, to keep them grounded. Without Byleth, they all end up lost. And seeing the effect not having Byleth around has on each of the characters during your subsequent playthroughs is really cool to see. You really are seeing firsthand what no Byleth does to him. No, but seriously, after finishing Crimson Flower and moving on to Verdant Wind, it was crazy seeing Edelgard from a whole different perspective. It's like I didn't know her anymore because I played Crimson Flower first. I had a preconceived perspective of what kind of character I thought she was, and it made me really conflicted in having to fight her in a war within Verdant Wind. Because in my head, I'm kind of like, hey, wait a minute, doesn't she have a point? Like, why am I stopping this war? A lot of feelings like this will depend on what route you chose to go down first. And have I ever seen a lot of different perspectives on certain characters and aspects of these stories? The fact that you can actually see things from so many different perspectives, and the fact that everything is so morally grey, makes Fire Emblem Three Houses a game that is able to bring about some amazing discussions, but unfortunately, it can also have the side effect of bringing about a whole lot of toxicity. We'll get into that later. Now, I want to get to the supports and the characters. This is an interesting one for me, because I was so heavily invested in Crimson Flower and replayed it multiple times, whereas the other routes I only played once. So I could talk to you for a long time about the amazing supports in Crimson Flower and all the characters in the Black Eagles. But in terms of the other routes and the other houses, if I'm completely transparent with you, I don't remember a lot of the supports. There are some that stood out, but for the most part, they've kind of just gone over my head. To be fair though, a lot of the characters in this game are really interesting and have a lot more to them than just their surface level tropes, which really helps them grow on you throughout your playthrough, even with characters you didn't even think you were going to like at the start. For me, the character that embodies this the most is Hubert. He's still not one of my favourite characters, however I started off my Black Eagles playthrough really disliking him, only to see him eventually grow as a person throughout the war, and his supports realising that he can actually rely on all of his classmates within the Black Eagles, and comes out a much better person because of it. Another character I really enjoyed, of course, was Edelgard. She has some really great support conversations with Hanneman, Manuela, and of course Byleth that see her perspective actually be challenged and really let her see the bigger picture. Her whole character arc as a whole is really great, and like I said, I've done a whole video on her if you want my explanation on that and want to hear me go more in depth. Other standout characters, of course, are the other lords, Claude and Dimitri. They both have a very good amount of depth to them and have interesting mentalities with really great supports throughout their routes. Notable ones for Dimitri include Marianne and Felix, and for Claude, notably I really enjoyed his supports with Shamir, Flayn and Byleth. Outside of the main lords, other really great character supports that I enjoyed include Dorothea with Manuela and Ferdinand, Felix and Annette, Hubert and Petra, Ash and Mercedes and Ingrid, Hilda and Caspar, Bernadetta and Linhart, Ferdinand and Hubert, and many more, honestly. I think you can get genuine enjoyment out of almost any support chain in the series, which is a lot more than I can personally say I got from Awakening. The supports in that game felt like such a chore to me. There's only one character in Three Houses that I genuinely dislike, but still appreciate and enjoy what they do for the plot. That character is Rhea. This is of course completely subjective and biased, but she always just gave me a bit of a creepy vibe and felt like someone even more stuck in the past than Dimitri was. All in all though, I think she plays a really great role as the villain, especially in Crimson Flower. I really liked her in that route. But outside of that, I can't say I'm a big fan. Now, I've talked about how fun the gameplay is, how great the story and characters are, and a few downsides to each route to keep things grounded. But a major gripe I have with Three Houses at times is the illusion of choice within the dialogue throughout the story. While some dialogue does offer genuine change in the supports of certain characters, a lot of dialogue choices change absolutely nothing, and you can see that in the replies that you get that sound like they could have worked either way. I can see where this might have been coming from, as giving the player many dialogue choices makes Byleth work a little bit better as a player insert character, as you can pick the option you think you would personally say. But really, I feel like these fake choices really just do a disservice to the game and make it feel really shallow at some points. As a whole, I don't love or hate Byleth as a character. I think they're fine and service their player insert role adequately, and I much prefer them to Robin in Awakening. But there are definitely much better examples of player insert characters out there. So the last thing I wanted to touch on is the toxicity. I can't write a video about Fire Emblem Three Houses without quickly touching on the toxicity found in the fanbase. However, I don't want to give it too much attention because, let's be honest, it doesn't deserve it, but it is something that needs to be addressed. The game has been out since 2019. It's crazy to think that it's coming on being nearly 2 years old now, and yet you still see some people go on absolutely massive rants about which route is better and which characters are better, and absolutely tearing other people down for no real reason. Now, I think we can all agree that every single route has its redeeming qualities and every single route has its flaws. And the game itself is just that good that no matter what route you play, you're gonna have a fun time. We're all here because we enjoy the game, and a lot of us seem to really enjoy the conversations that the game brings about. At least I know I do, and it would be amazing to just keep it that way. There are a lot of us that are playing Fire Emblem that are adults, and quite frankly, there's probably a lot of people that aren't. However, I think I speak for everyone when I say there's nothing wrong with everyone acting like adults and having a mature, light-hearted conversation about a video game and not getting all riled up about it. Fact of the matter is, everyone is going to have their biases, especially with a route you've played first. Everyone is going to have characters that they're attached to, and everyone's going to have characters that they dislike. But at the end of the day, I think it's important that we can all have fun and interesting conversations about this game without absolutely going off on people for no reason. Because what is the point in that? Fortunately enough, the comment section on both my Crimson Flower and Edelgard videos have been some of the most civil Fire Emblem Three Houses discussions I've ever seen and participated in. And I couldn't be more proud of that considering the things I've seen elsewhere, like on the subreddits, for example. However, of course, those videos only have like 15,000 views combined, so it's a much smaller sample size. But I'm just glad that so many of us could have these really long and interesting conversations about a series that we all enjoy. And it's awesome to just hear your guys' thoughts thoughts, and I genuinely do go through the comments and reply to as many as I can, whether they are positive or negative. Anyway, ran over. Let's close off this video with a lighter note. In summary, Fire Emblem Three Houses did a lot right. It nailed the marketing aspect and the sales volumes reflect that. And the finished product of the game is absolutely deserving of those sales numbers. If you're watching this because you've never played Fire Emblem before and want to know if Three Houses is worth your time and money, I can say with confidence that the answer is yes. Otherwise, if you just really enjoy Fire Emblem and wanted to watch someone else talk about how amazing of a game Three Houses was, then thanks so much for watching and sticking around to the end. If you made it this far, let me know in the comments what your first route in Three Houses was and what your favorite route of Three Houses ended up being, because I'd love to hear about that and discuss it. Nonetheless, I hope you all enjoyed the video, hope you all have a great day, and I'll see you all next time. Peace.